Blog Talk Radio.
The purple angel, oh purple angel, you're next to me. Purple angel, oh purple angel, you're next to me. You're next to me. You're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am your host and founder of Alzheimer Speaks, which is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift your dementia care culture from crisis to comfort. And we do that worldwide by connecting people through our social media platforms with wonderful information and insights from those living with dementia to those caring for them, both family members and friends, as well as professionals and advocates, researchers, you name it, anyone and any service that can help others with this disease. We want to talk with them. We believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia, that we're going to be able to remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help those living with the disease live with purpose. Together, we can help everyone understand the true needs of the disease and remove, again, these myths and stigmas that are so isolating for those diagnosed and their loved ones. At our core, we believe collaboration is the only way that we're going to win this battle, and we know it's working because of all of your likes and clicks and shares regarding our resources. Each of you has had a huge impact, and so I just the time to like and share, because when you do that, you're pushing information out into your own circles, and many times we don't know who is dealing with this disease even in our own circles, and so it's critically important. The other thing that you did by doing that is you got Alzheimer's Speaks named as the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's, which was just huge. And that was a recognition by ShareCare, which is the largest health and wellness website in the world, and Dr. Oz. And for that, again, I want to thank each and every one of you for that. Today's show is going to be, I think, just absolutely fabulous, and we'd love to have you join the conversation. You can do that in two fashions. You can, if you're listening online via your computer, you can utilize your chat box, and I'll be checking for messages there, or you can always call in live to the show, and that number is 714-364-4757. Again, that number is 714-364-4757. Today's show, I'm really excited about. I got to meet this woman who I had heard so much about. Her name is Kay Baum, and last week I was honored to be one of the presenters at a dementia-friendly intensive that was done in Wisconsin by the Wisconsin Assisted Living Association. It was 4 hours of jam-packed information of what is happening in Wisconsin, which is pretty exciting. Wisconsin is really one of the leading states in our nation doing some really cool stuff. And I had the opportunity to not just meet Mary Kay, but actually interview her, and we had several phone conversations, and then when we got to meet was just very, very exciting for me. She's just doing phenomenal work. She is a woman who has been diagnosed with dementia, but by no means is this stopping her in her track. Today, she's going to share with us how the disease has changed her and how she expresses herself a little bit differently. And I know that you're going to glean a lot of great information and insights from our conversation. Hopefully that you'll take home and apply in your personal life, and if you're in the business, at work, and that you'll share with others. The information is so powerful and yet so simple if we just slow down to pay attention to what it is she's saying. And she also has a great tip sheet that we will talk about. One of the things that I love too about Mary Kay was that she told me she doesn't live with dementia. She lives with cognitive changes in life. And living life well is really about perceptions, about those dealing with symptoms of dementia. And I thought, gosh, what a nice way to put that. She has not slowed down one iota, and I don't expect she will. She's kind of been a community mover and shaker in Wisconsin for years. And so I'm just thrilled to have you on the show. Welcome, Mary Kay. How are you today?
I am fine, and I think we should clarify dementia is usually or often defined as having a condition that interferes with your daily functioning of normal habits of daily functioning, such as dressing, maybe driving, numbers of things. And I don't fit that definition. What runs in our family is a dementia of combined Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. So if whatever I have continues, if it progresses, it would likely lead to that. I have both of my parents were autopsied with proven Alzheimer's, and one with my mother with the very early stage, early onset in her mid-50s, and that's what runs mostly among the women in our family. So with that clarification, your question was...
Well, basically, I was just introducing you, and I was kind of setting up. What I wanted to do was really talk to you about what we talked about at the WALA conference, because it was so powerful, and people were just so excited about what you had to say. And basically, what we did there was we talked about the normal senses, seeing, hearing, those types of things. But you broke each one down and gave examples of how things have changed and how your perceptions, dealing with those senses have changed, and so then it changes your reaction. And so I kind of wanted to go through just again examples of that. And so if we can maybe start with your eyesight, and how do you see things differently today?
Okay. I like to start with a positive change. I am much more immersed in nature, and so when I see a wildflower blooming or the cliffs in the land or something, I feel more connected, more in awe than I ever did in the past. It is meditative for me, more vivid, makes me feel like I'm accepted by all of creation and the Creator. So that is a positive change, and I do like to relay that early on, because I think persons without known cognitive changes could benefit also by hearing that about taking time to do that. But the more challenges are that I am not so able to learn from a written instruction book or even a demonstration. Ultimately, I need to watch myself learning how to use a new camera or learning how to use a new tool at the hardware store by doing it myself, and having someone guiding me to through it, and until I and successful several times. Okay. More traditional seeing through my glasses. I got glasses quite late in life, and I was given bifocals, and because I had a slight distance problem, but most of it was reading, and they just felt it would be easier to adapt to both at the same time. But the bifocals, my brain, my mind, or the nerves to the brain could not adjust going through the reading part of the glasses for my peripheral vision. Mm-hmm. And so peripheral vision is so important when you're outside hiking or even walking the streets. I started to fall as I would walk off a curb in the city that I've spent tons of years in, because no longer was my brain able to translate through the reading part of my glasses, and if I was carrying something, that was even so much worse. And most of us have our peripheral vision just automatic. We don't even think about it. But I learned I'd have to look down purposely to see what was right in front of me, make sure I wasn't stepping into a hole or something, and look up to see where I was heading towards. And that was some adjustment. And, when we get our eye practitioners to talk more with our neurological practitioners, maybe they'll forewarn people about this. But a very common thing that I have and that I hear from other people with mild cognitive impairment is we're looking for an object in our house in order to leave. We're rushing, and we just don't see the object even though it's in plain view. That could be my smartphone. That could be anything I really need. It seems like I cannot find it. My judgment of space is skewed somewhat. I don't have trouble with driving. I just had an excellent assessment on that and follow. But looking at maps, really hard. And I might fall over things that, again, I don't see that are right in front of me. And that would be called spatial, too.
Uh-huh.
Things on TV and the movies, it didn't bother me years ago, or most of my adult life, to see the violent scenes, the chase scenes, but now they really startle me. In fact, my family will just be, I will get startled by a commercial, where there's even something that's really totally obviously fictional, like a great big baby on top of a little car, or some commercial kind of thing. It just, I even respond with my hands up, or with a voice, a sound, a startled voice coming out of me, and I am, for things that are ongoing, chase scenes or violence on television, I just have to close my eyes. And sometimes I just I'll sometimes fall asleep in a movie theater because I've closed my eyes to that kind of thing, and my family will hear me starting to snore or something. It's like, it's embarrassing, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens.
I noticed that a lot with my mom, and once I realized that, it was so easy to just go turn the TV off, because I remember her thinking that we were actually, when they were bombing Iraq, she thought that was happening around her, and I couldn't figure out why she was
watch
trying.
The Weather Channel sometimes, and I have close relatives watching. a close relative watching the Weather Channel where they're showing tornadoes in states away will often feel, as if it's right close by, and be fearful. Fear is an easy tendency for us anyway. It's if we get a form of depression, it's often very fear-based. The other thing is sensory overload. It didn't used to bother me when, and I think this is part of the chase scenes and stuff too, when I see a website and it's zooming in and zooming out and there's moving objects and graphics, it kind of makes me dizzy even. It certainly startles me, and it is not pleasant to me. I would switch off those websites and, go off of them immediately. I think that might be a tip to many marketers. And I think it's kind of common for many people as we age anyway. The overload of movement and sounds, but we're trying to talk visual, but I'd rather have a calming and more simplified things to see. Our family likes to play miniature golf, or has when we get together, and I can't concentrate on doing a good stroke to get the ball into the hole, and at the same time track of my numbers of strokes. It's too much at once, and so I've learned I'll just have whichever family member is right behind me to keep track of the number of strokes. Then I don't feel like I'm cheating, and yet I can concentrate on the fun of the challenge of the game itself.
Sure,
it's interesting. I used to think I could hold all these visual things in my mind at once, and that is not the case. I want to stay with one thing at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, those are great examples that I think can really help people out a lot when it comes to sight and keeping things in mind. Can you give us some examples of sound and hearing? Because I know this, you talked about sensory overload, and so I know that can really come into play with hearing.
Oh, yes. Hearing sudden noises, I will cringe or gasp from, and when I in a family reunion or something, which I used to enjoy greatly, but the sensory overload of some are watching a football game right near us and cheering for that, and some of us are heating up food and discussing, the recipe for whatever traditional food, and the kids are, riding these little toys that make noise, and the doorbell rings and the phones ring, and if I'm in an assisted living home visiting someone, a warning sign, somebody that's gone out a door or something. All this at once, playing bingo in the background. It is overwhelming, and I can handle being there if I really want to, but it totally exhausts me. Even if I'm doing nothing there, the noise, the different kinds of noise, I'll give a very simple example, because we wouldn't normally think of going into a restaurant as noise overload. But if I'm at a table wanting to talk with someone that I'm eating with, and there's just a normal conversation in the next booth or the next table, I can't block out that sound the way I used to. And I used to be very good at that. As a candidate for public office, many times I could go from one conversation in a room full of conversations and just hear the person I'm wanting to talk with. Now I can't. I cannot block that out. And I can work really hard to look at the person I want to talk to and try to only hear their words. But I will be exhausted again by that sort of overwork on trying to stay within one set of sounds. And I think people don't catch that, especially if I'm good at camouflaging that. But I will, in leaving the restaurant or the location, I will be more exhausted than when I came in. And the whole point was to have a refreshing, lunch or gathering, in a pleasant gathering. So it's very, that is one of the more significant aspects of my changes. And since my changes are very early on, I can imagine it's amplified with people who are in more advanced stages. So.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, huge issue for people. And it's, I think it's something that our businesses are really going to have to look at with the population changing and the numbers growing. These big, huge open rooms just aren't going to work.
That piped-in music that is, it irritates it's very hard then to have a conversation with the clerk about how something runs or what I need, what I'm really looking for, if there's all this other sound coming at me. And another thing is more on the emotional side of hearing. If someone teases me, and I'm used to a family that teased each other and it was just fine, and I was good at comebacks that were truly funny and so forth. But now if someone teases me, say my son says, "Mom, you don't understand how to use that simple app on your smartphone," I will take his words so literally and also more negatively. I don't catch the intonation that it's a tease. He's now learned to either not tease or do it so out of proportion that I would not miss it. I think part of the reason I don't catch that things are a tease is I'm often not, I'm so intent on hearing or something that I close my eyes or I'm not looking at his face and not catching the smile or the, impish teasing type expression. And often, another example is rhetorical questions. I'll just start answering the rhetorical question in detail, and that's not what people were wanting. So I don't catch or hear intonation the way I used to. I also take questions often as almost attacks, like someone is asking me, what's the name of this person, this relative in your picture, or that's here. I having to come or being asked to come up with names or is very hard, and so being asked, I don't take it in a pleasurable way the way I used to.
Okay. Steve had commented in the chat box. He says, our filtering system is compromised now. He says, every sound enters our brain, and we can't shut it out. He says, it's exhausting. He said his family now requests.
Oh, that is so perfect.
Yep.
A lot of people with hearing aids will say the same thing. Many hearing aids just amplify all sounds.
Yep.
I know there are more sophisticated ones than that, but and the person with difficulty hearing will be overwhelmed by so many sounds. And I've advised.
How many times like a person with a hearing aid is a great example. How many times do you hear people, I mean, they just turn it off. They just turn it off. And then their family members get mad, turn that thing back on. It's like, no, it's putting me in overload, It's putting me in overload. I'm gonna shut down so I can relax, David says he's gotten his family now, they request that music be turned off when they go out. Or I would imagine when they're in the house, and he says, people really have to understand we have to work twice as hard to tune into a conversation. Otherwise, we miss little things. And I think that's such a critical thing. If care partners can, just walk away with one thing, just imagine working twice as hard to have a conversation. I think
and there are simple ways. For both those with hearing aids and for people like me who can't block out the other sounds nearly as easily as I used to sit at a table with 8 chairs around it, there's going to be more than one conversation going on. There's probably going to be 2 or more likely 3 conversations going on at once. No matter where I sit, in the middle or wherever, I cannot be a part of any of those conversations because of the competing sounds. And persons with hearing aids often are in the same situation and would rather be at a table set for 4. And even and sometimes these tables for 8 are really 2 tables put together, and how much easier it would be. But the whole culture needs to start thinking about these things and making adaptations that are good for many people. Many people, their whole lives have problems with, multiple conversations. I just happen to, in the past, have been very good at being able to block out. So these are lessons I've learned myself and from talking with others in similar situations have helped me to think about adaptations that would just make life so much happier. I don't have to isolate myself by going into a room by myself when it gets to be too much. We can look ahead and we can arrange the setting so that one conversation is most likely to happen in one, around one table or one little grouping of chairs.
Really important. And people just have to, pay more attention because I know for me, I'm 55 now. We'll be 56 in a couple months, and I know I have a lot more trouble with background noise, and I'm sure it's nothing compared to what people with dementia or hearing loss are dealing with, and it frustrates the crap out of me, it's irritating and it's upsetting because you want to be able to join in the conversation, but when you can't hear everything. I remember I was out with 2 other girlfriends, and we were at a Perkins. This was hilarious. And they had music playing, and we asked them if they could please turn that down. And the young little waitress looked at us like we were crazy. And we said, and we looked around and we said, you have to understand your audience here is all older. And it's very difficult for us to talk with that background noise because it was really loud. And so they turned it down just a hair. And finally we pulled the manager over and just said, because we all deal in the industry, and said, this is really inappropriate. This isn't, I know this is what you guys have always done, but it's not what people are looking for anymore. You go into the sports bars and all the different avenues, and everything's big and open and high ceilings that echo and bounce sounds, and they need to put in some absorption panels for noise, in things because
I had not thought of that, and that is a common problem, those echo sounds.
Yep.
Well, that's, yeah, and it won't hurt anybody who, can handle that extra music, and it will make so many people's lives easier. And many people, many people throughout their lives have this kind of issue, especially if they have a hearing issue. And my hearing is very good, but you could, if you look people in the face, you can see they're struggling to hear or just hear the person they want, that they're talking with. And but you have to pay attention. And some of the people I've noticed among my good friends, some of them have trouble with hearing themselves, so they'll talk when somebody else is, even in a little foursome group where we should be able to hear each other very well, they'll talk over somebody else who's already talking. And then I can't hear or I can't absorb either thing that's going on. And so people with hearing problems who haven't ever gotten help with them need to be aware, too, that they could be adding to the unpleasantness or the difficulty of others right close by.
Sure, which makes, it just makes a ton of sense. That we all have to be much more conscious. I know Harry Urban, who joins us a lot, he's part of our Dementia Chats group. He says it really helps him because he does have hearing loss to be able to see somebody. So again, looking at somebody, he says I read lips a lot. And he says most of us do and don't even know that we do it because we're so used to reading nonverbals, but we don't give them the value on the importance scale in terms of our communication. And over 3/4 of how we communicate is nonverbal. And
exactly.
So, that's another huge factor.
There's one other thing about hearing, and that is it's hard for me, or harder for me than it used to be, to hear one long, complicated sentence all rushed together. And I'm not a good model of what I want. I want people to speak in short sentences with a little pause between them. And not that, by sentences it could be clauses. I'm not talking grammatically. I'm talking about what I don't want is the people to suddenly think that they have to say every word really slowly because that feels very like a put down, like I can't understand what they're going to say or what people are saying unless every word is sort of stretched out. The way people often, if you're trying to speak to someone where English is not their first language, we all tend to kind of stretch out each word. That's not what that we're saying. That's not what I'm asking for. For me, and for many people like me, shorter sets of words and then a pause and then another set of words is better than a long monologue. It's just it's too much to take in all at once. Again, it's sort of sensory overload in a way.
Yep.
And yet we don't. It's not helpful. It's almost demeaning to do it where every word is so. It's not like I can't understand the words, and I guess really that really comes down to getting to know the person you're talking with, and what is the best for them, and for each other, and but in the meantime, until you really know somebody well, pause between sets of words that can come together as one thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to not only pause when you're talking, but pause when you are asking a question and allow a person time to respond. Because a lot of times we're like a train and we just run them over. You know, we hate silence, and so it fills a space.
And silence is golden, and it does. It invites the person, it invites me to take my time to put a concise and a clear answer together that really says what I want to say. And if someone just asks 5 questions in a row, or and that is a debate. When you're trying to intimidate the other speaker in a debate club or something, you might do that kind of thing. It is intimidating. And do you really want to intimidate your friend? And so the friend never feels that you really want to hear, or I feel like they really don't want to hear my opinion on the first question or the second question or the third, because they've just all pushed them together. It feels really like an attack when people do that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so important, and then we get mad when somebody withdraws, but yet we're not allowing them time to respond.
What we just caused, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
You gotta decide. But it's those little things. I was at another conference the week before the WALA conference, and I can't remember who spoke. Wonderful woman, and she worked at a Jerry Psych unit. And one of the things she said is that there's the 7-second rule. She said when you ask a question, she says count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just in your head. Give them 7 seconds to respond, because the wheels are spinning in a little different fashion. It's not that the answer isn't in there; it's just trying to find its way out.
Exactly.
And so she said,
that's wonderful. And the tone of voice when asking that question, even though I say, I sometimes don't catch the tone of voice, but if there's some tinge of a put down or some negativity to the question, I will interpret it as a put down. So as it would, so an inviting question, and one that isn't, preferably one that is not asking for a precise who, what, where question, where you feel on demand to come up with the name of a person. That's when I'm not going to be able to come up with the name of the person. But there are ways to help me say more about a subject by saying something like, "Well, that must have felt frustrating," or I remember when something like that happened to me, or what I noticed when that happened was thus and thus, and then giving space for me to add additional information without it feeling like an interrogation. Questions can feel like an interrogation. They can feel like a test to see how I am functioning cognitively. Most of us, all of us with a diagnosis, have had plenty of those kinds of assessments, and that's fine, but we really don't want that in our normal conversation. We'd rather have a sharing of experiences or reviews or or plans or whatever, but not feel like we are the subject of an exam happening right then and there.
Yep. Well, and none of us want to feel that way, especially when we're around friends or out in the community. I mean, if we're getting an exam,
Right.
okay, then we're in a doctor's office, you know.
Right.
So, it's about being respectful. Steve had noted to one of your comments. He says, "Yes, Mary Kay. It's as if they're doing it on purpose to exclude us. Sometimes the way people communicate with us, and how awful. I mean, we all know what it's like to feel excluded, and it's not a pleasant feeling. And so we really have to be conscious of how we are coming off, and maybe our intent isn't that, but like you're explaining, sometimes you interpret things differently. One of the things, in fact, that we had talked about before was you had talked about people give like a vague warning, like be careful, and that can really startle you. And you said
yes,
you need more information.
Yes, I'd much rather have a concrete. Let's step over here instead of don't fall or be careful. That gives me no information. It startles me. I'm more likely to fall. I want a positive, clear suggestion rather than a vague, negative alarm. And frankly, doesn't everybody?
Yeah. Well, and a good example would be like if you're driving and someone says, "Look out!" You know, and you're behind the wheel and you're like, your eyes are peeling all over. Am I going to hit something? Is there a car coming? Is it, is the light change? I mean, your mind starts spinning through, what is it? And if I slam on my brakes, is someone going to rear end me? So when someone tells you that, again, it's, put it in context makes a lot of sense because it's like
I much rather hear car approaching on your right, or something in a calm voice, maybe some added information that I may well be aware of, but might not be. And I'm not saying, people shouldn't ever, give information to the driver, but or that your turn is coming up here is much better to hear than, start to turn, or and it's it's unsettling. Other people's, what comes across as anxiety in other people will cause anxiety in me, and I can't turn that off as easily as other people because of my brain chemical changes. I'm going to be on high alert longer, and in the examples we're talking about right now, on high alert, not knowing what the alert is. That's just not. It's actually probably causes more accidents than it reduces.
Yeah, which is a really good point, because that when we yell something out, it is about trying to help and trying to increase safety, and we have to know it. Is it going to add to the problem? And you had mentioned tone of voice. You say it in a calm voice. The more scared you are, the more scared I'm going to be.
Exactly.
I mean that's how we always react. And so that's really important. To help in that controlled fashion. It
fits with the rushing me to get ready or to be able to leave, or to someone rushes me, I automatically slow down. I don't know how to explain that, except it's probably, again, hearing overload. It raises... people should know that those of us with cognitive changes tend to have trouble moving from one activity to another as it is. Our form of depression, by many psychiatrists, is seen as a difficulty to, or it tends towards inertia. and not initiating the first steps to another activity, or getting up to leave to go to another activity. But rushing or yelling about needing to move forward to what we even want to go to it kind of blocks the ability to take the next step, because of the impatience of the other person. And again, so calm words about shall I get your green jacket for you is much better, and it's again asking whether I want that help, but to just start what feels like blaming is, or shaming, that I'm not already ready. I'm not ready. If I'm not ready, shaming me about not being ready is not going to get me ready any faster, and it's probably going to slow me down. And since my steps for getting ready now are not automatic, it used to be, I would just, what I needed to do in the morning to go out of the house was sort of just automatic. I didn't have to think twice about whether I brushed my teeth already, or now every step is a conscious step. And I probably should have a checklist of what they are as I'm going out the door, or too often my cell phone will be still on the counter. I should, but I can make those adaptations. But someone pushing. I'm not going to be able to find the shoe that I haven't, to match any faster by someone making me feel bad. Bottom line.
Well, and again, I think so much of what we're talking about today is similar to if someone's got dementia or not. I mean, nobody likes to be treated like that. Nobody likes to feel like that. And one of my big, platforms that I get on when I get out there speaking is about, our care culture. I mean, it's rotten. I mean, it doesn't really exist anymore. And we have to consciously care about how we interact and how we react and how we engage people, because each of us is very powerful and we affect a lot more people than we think we do. And we really have to, start consciously thinking, how's somebody taking this? How is this being perceived? Because you can change things pretty easily if you just pay attention.
Yeah, I'll give two examples. A negative example: I'm in a store with where they sell plants, and a big nursery type store, and I asked for geraniums because I like to have them indoors in a window in a bathroom during the winter, because the smell of geranium is just wonderful, and they like the moisture. Okay. Well, the comeback can be, we don't sell geraniums this time of year, because they're thinking about, most geraniums are planted so that they'll bloom in fall outside. Okay. They didn't have to use that tone or that, don't you know, geraniums aren't sold at this time of year, that kind of an attitude. I go into the hardware store. I thank them for the dementia-friendly that they're a dementia-friendly business sign outside, and I tell the clerk that I'm on the board of the Alzheimer's Dementia Alliance, and I so appreciate you went through the training, and that you are aware of what cognitive changes can mean. And the person says, the clerk says, but isn't that the way we should treat everyone?
Bingo. Yep.
Bingo. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, it's those small things of just putting things in perspective. And again, I just think it is so critical that we start looking at our commonalities instead of our differences. It's so easy to make people different, and and when you start looking at somebody different, then it's one's better than another, and we get into the whole judging thing. Where if we look at our commonalities, we look at our similarities, and we look at the equalities, and it's a whole different approach.
And our young people need to understand this for their own sake and acceptance. We have a youth camp where we will, besides the usual fun of a camp, youth who have a loved one with cognitive changes are invited to this, and we will talk about how Grandma might need to leave the basketball game that you're playing in, and it won't be because you missed the basket, but and she's leaving in disgust, but rather the commotion. She could only take that much commotion, and it would be great if you let Grandma know how much you even that you as a youth appreciate that she made the effort to come. And some youth have said to their grandma, "You are my best cheerleader. I know you can't stay as long as you'd like, but I love seeing you there when you can." And that's affirmation and the youth can understand that. Otherwise, and sometimes a youth is visiting someone like in a nursing home, and Grandma is very glad, so happy to see the youth. But there might be several youth at once, and after a while it might get to be too much, and Grandma maybe isn't going to be able to explain this, but she needs to go into a quiet room for a little bit, or go outside for a moment. I go outside during family reunions and just get some peace and quiet before I can come back in. But if the youth, if not just youth but also adults can understand or pre-warned about this, or they can just take it as normalizing. Museums that would like docents of older people, including people with cognitive changes, who might just be able to give a really good, explanation about parts of the museum. But sometimes I've advised them to have like what employees would have as a little break room where we can just go to have peace and quiet so we can come back and engage again.
Yeah, that quiet is so important. One of the things I say this all the time. Again, it's one of Harry Urban's sayings. I like to relax before I got dementia. I still do. I just think that's so wonderful.
And somehow I still like to. Yes.
Yeah, and again, it's
exactly.
Like, I don't like it when I'm being pushed to do stuff when I'm just tired and I want to relax. It's just like leave me alone. It's okay. I'm comfortable. Comfort is good. And sometimes we're so worried about our comfort as a care partner, thinking that we have to be doing something, instead of really looking at the comfort of the person we're caring for, or that we're just out with. It's just we have to look at things different. We have to. That's how we're going to break the myth, is by having these conversations. Real important stuff. Let's talk about the sense of smell and how that has changed for you.
again, I'd like to start with the positive. I take more time and I notice more beautiful flower scents, especially wildflowers. I've noticed that the roses that one buys in a store seem to be bred for beauty rather than for scent. But anyway, and herbal scents, and aromatherapy is wonderful for me. But other scents, toxic scents, like from cigarette smoke or wood-burning stoves or those fake perfumes that are supposed to cover scents, those artificial perfumes and air fresheners, those kinds of things. The dry cleaning, the old-fashioned dry cleaning that is pretty chemically based, hairspray, all these things bother me. The fact that the person ahead of me in the washing machine in the dryer used a heavy-duty kind of softener sheet. Recently, I was at an event meant for people with cognitive changes, and we had to use magic markers that smelled terribly. I mean, that made me almost nauseous. And the most permanent ones are kind of like that, I think. But now you can get them that are, totally nonsense, that for purpose of a name tag that's going to be on you for an hour. And, of course, you put this so close to your nose. It's like the toxins that are in fingernail polish remover. I have to put that up with that sometimes when I have an EEG. That's the kind of thing that they use to get the stuff off your hair. But I have to avoid these kind of things because even swimming pools, chlorine or their alternative of bromine, I may well get vertigo from it. People have and that is not good for my brain. It's not just unpleasantness, it's actually, disruptive. I may be more sensitive. I grew up where there was, paper mills spewing PCBs into the air, and there was arsenic in the soil, and we had the highest incidence of polio in the whole United States in the county I grew up in. So I pay attention to what might be bothering me. And it can be, I remember from a child eating 2 hot dogs, which I wouldn't do all that often, but at a baseball game or something, you might end up doing that. I would get a sense of headache from that. And I'm sure it was the preservatives that were being used in those days so heavily. But all these, and smell, it does help us find some of those chemicals, but not all of them. But I am much more affected by that than I used to be, or than the average person is. I might be a canary in the coal mine. I do not think that long term. Exposure to me might take effect faster. But I think it's probably the kind of exposure we should all avoid as much as we possibly can.
I agree. I totally agree with you on that. One of the things I love about talking with you, Mary Kay, is you always, say let's start with the positives. Because it is, but it's important to, with any change in life, there's good and there's bad. And sometimes we just focus on the one side. So again, not really any different than any other circumstances. I talk about, my mom's disease being probably the biggest gift to me I'll ever receive. And people
how seldom do we hear that? And we seldom hear it in the commercials to raise money for a cure, even. I mean, and yet I do feel that the whole public could respond better and change our culture to be more accepting and more healthy for all of us.
Yep.
If we saw the positive things and that imagination, for instance, is worth a lot, and the engagement with music and the arts. I became a photographer, a highly regarded photographer, at age 57. I got my first digital camera, and a true friend who showed me how to use the camera, but helped me practice with it with other women who were learning for the first time too, had nothing to do with their cognitive changes. And now that has become a major therapy in my life. In fact, I rather call it an exploration or a joy in my life, is being able to photograph a wonderful moment and then be able to edit it, to use it in different ways, and to share it with others. I put it on Facebook, and all those likes and people thanking me for sharing the scene that they didn't get to see the day before, is so affirming. It makes me feel like I'm continuing to contribute and telling my story today to you and to the audience. It makes me feel like I'm contributing towards the good of our society, and I believe that's my greatest therapy, or my greatest way to reduce or keep at bay the challenges of the difficult challenges of Alzheimer's or other dementias, while engaging in the present moment and living life well right now.
Mm-hmm. Which is how we should all be living our lives,
Well, exactly.
We stay out of other people's business and don't be so judging, and we don't cause all these wars and different things that are happening around us on no matter what level or what scale, by trying to make people who they aren't. Everyone should be able to live their fullest by being, honest and authentic as to who they are, as long as it's not harming anyone else, or causing harm to themselves. And again, to me, I think the disease is really here to teach us to get back to basics, to be better people, because we're not that good anymore. I'm sorry to say. I mean, there's a lot of good out there, don't get me wrong, but we could do a lot better. If we had to look at our report card, I don't think we'd be too happy. If we had to go bring our report card home to our folks.
The people I find the most difficult to be around are the ones who are judging me, like they know exactly what my medical situation is, and they, of course, are way off. They, are assuming I can't drive anymore, even though I just had this, most wonderful professional driver assessment. And I'm probably a better driver than they are because they drive too slow and tend towards the middle of the road. I mean, but they are so quick to judge me and say really discriminatory kinds of things. But I do believe that the way what is bothering them is their own fear of their own cognitive changes, some of which they've maybe already experienced, and they are having a hard time accepting it. I think those are the people I have the hardest time to be with, because it really is coming out of their fear. And that means we have to change as you said, we need the report card of our whole community and of our whole culture needs to be upgraded by our appreciation of what each person can give at the moment, and their gifts to the community, and how they can engage and be helpful. I do not want to be seen as just a person who needs care. Mm-hmm. I can help care for others and help us develop a better culture. And I think I'll be able to do that even if my condition becomes more advanced. And it's very important for my health to be appreciated. I mean, it can sound kind of self-serving, but those likes on a photograph I put on Facebook, those make my day. Mm-hmm. And it's or they start my day in a very good way. Let's put it that way. I have enough feeling of self-worth, and I love myself enough that I'm not going to be totally at somebody's who has a problem and fears about their medical future. I'm not going to be totally at their I'm try hard not to take their words as if that's a real understanding of what should be. Sure. And you're catching that I'm having trouble communicating right now, and I should just own that. I'm kind of rambling, and I'm kind of not getting to my point quickly, and that is me now. And it would be better. It's better if I let you, but I think it's let you draw me to my point. But and by your questions, which are very good, the way you interview is really good. But in a way, maybe it's good that the audience has just heard me struggle with getting to my point, and learning that is something I have. I've gone to a speech therapist because actually they can help with some of that, and one of their best advice was let people know that you need a few moments to be able to answer concisely. So you do that automatically by interjecting, and then that gives me a chance to put my thoughts together. I've never had this happen before, where in front of people, and to be able to name what was just happening. And I think this has actually been a good learning situation for me and maybe for the audience.
Well, I think you've been doing an excellent job. And in fact, speaking of interjecting, I just want to take a break, and I just want to give a couple of organizations a shout out and do some highlights, if that's okay with you.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, I always like to give a shout out to the Purple Angel Project, which is the new global symbol for dementia. If you're interested in learning more on how you can tap into becoming a Purple Angel, which costs you no money and takes very little time, just go to alzheimerspeaks.com and go to our About page. There you'll see the tab for the Purple Angel, and it'll be one click away, and we'll get you up and running. The Alzheimer's Disease International organization is a fantastic organization. They are the association of all the Alzheimer's associations around the world. So if you're looking for an association close to you, if you are looking for global information and reports, they have wonderful, wonderful resources there. Check out ADI, or Alzheimer's Disease International. If you're here in Minnesota, or New Mexico, actually, Health Star Home Health is just a fabulous company. I have worked with them on several initiatives. They have trained their staff to become Alzheimer's whisperers. One of the things that I love about their approach is they're not just about training their staff, but their staff share what they've learned with the families they work with. And, they've done memory screenings, very, very in touch and just extremely helpful and resourceful company. Again, HealthStar Home Health. If you're looking for a holistic approach, the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation is wonderful. There you'll find information on food and diet and exercise and meditations. Many people have different types of dementia. Alzheimer's is one, but there's also Lewy body and frontal temporal lobe. Both have national organizations, along with the National Aphasia Association, which deals with speech. And as Mary Kay said, there's a lot of things that can be done to assist people with their speech. Alzheimer's Music Connect, again, is one of my favorite companies. The owner of that, Ron, actually his mom had the disease, but he has a patent pending technology that actually helps people engage up to 3 hours longer after listening to the music. And the music's absolutely gorgeous. So check out Alzheimer's Music Connect. And then there's Puzzle With Me. Jane Snyder developed new puzzles. Again, same situation, family member touched or needed something different. Her mom liked to do puzzles, and so she created more adult-appropriate puzzles, fewer pieces, larger in size, so they're easier to grab. And then Jiminy Wicket with James Creasy is an adaptive croquet game that can be used for education in schools. The schools can team up with memory care, or the product can be just used at home as a family. It's a wonderful game. We use it with our memory cafes. So those are just some of my faves there that I like to give a shout out to. If you missed our last radio show, I did do a replay on the taboo discussion, life and death with dementia, a choice we choose not to discuss, which is, you're hearing more and more about this discussion. Very, very interesting, a broad spectrum of people speaking, both that are living with the disease, care partners, doctors, a little bit of everybody on that show. We also had one where we did movie reviews, which was kind of fun in terms of, what are out there in terms of films and documentaries about Alzheimer's and other types of dementia and caregiving. Our next show next week is going to be called Creative Connections in Dementia Care, Engaging Activities to Enhance Communication. So we're going to have the authors of this new book on with us, which will be fun. And then this afternoon we will be doing our Dementia Chats webinar at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 2 Central, 1 o'clock Mountain Time, noon Pacific, and 8 p.m. London time. Those are free. You can either go to our homepage or our Facebook page, Dementia Chats, and find more information on how to partake in that. We would love to have you there. Our last one, all of them are recorded, just like the radio shows, so you can go back and listen and watch any of them. But our last Dementia Chats, we had a discussion on our healthcare system. And it was really interesting on what our experts thought about how they were told, how they were diagnosed. We talked about doctors and medical professionals, the need for them to get more educated and more knowledgeable, not just on dementia, but also about providing supportive services and being able to refer people out. And they gave a lot of great examples and strategies were discussed as well. On the blog, just a couple of posts I want to mention. There's a really fun one about a Boy Scout getting his Eagle Scout designation, and he did that with a vision of improving lives for those with dementia by building a saltwater fish tank. It took him almost 2 years to raise the money, build it, get it stocked, find a home for it, and there's a video that goes with that. Our intern, Michelle, did a nice story on the importance of family. And I also posted one called Feeling Blessed. I just had an article written on me that was absolutely phenomenal, and I know my mom will be very, very proud because without her, I wouldn't be doing any of this work at all. But it's just kind of a fun article, and it's something that I wanted to share with people as well with there. So that's it kind of for my little updates there. Mary Kay, do you have still some more time? Maybe we can finish going through some of these examples?
Sure, I'd love that.
Okay.
And our website is www.formemory.org. And the information about that youth camp, which is in mid-July in Wisconsin, is posted on there too, along with many of the examples that I've or the suggestions I make, called some ABCs of friending with just about anyone, but there's many pages and resources there, and we're going to have to make sure all of the resources you just mentioned are on our resource page too. That's excellent.
Okay. Great. And then you also, I wasn't aware of this, but at the conference, you gave out a book called Traveling with Hope. Is there a way that it's called Sharing Our Experiences with Memory Challenges? Is there a way for others to be able to purchase this book?
Yes, two ways. Both easiest, I guess, when we're talking over the radio is to go to that website, www.formemory, FORMEMORY.org. And it can be purchased by sending a check in, the address is there, or, and we suggest $18, especially if we're going to be sending it out. And the book has 10 examples of people who've written their own story of how they're living well with their cognitive changes.
It's a beautiful book.
Yes. Has a lot of the research cited in the back regarding foods and nutrition and avoiding toxins and so forth is now based on research that it just keeps being further enforced by more research. In our website, we add a lot of the newer research relating to social interaction as being so critical, and how to accompany people. For instance, suggesting that you go to an arboretum with somebody, or to a nature place with somebody who has some cognitive changes, and spending time in nature, where would be a great respite for the care partner, but also usually a very positive thing, and makes a world of difference to the person with cognitive changes who maybe just can't go off themselves and do that kind of activity. That's yes, and also we can take credit cards through the website. Tells you how to do that on the donation page.
Okay, wonderful. Let's go back to the senses and talk about the feeling of touch, and have you found changes in how you receive touch? Yes.
The startling issue is again comes up with touch. If someone approaches me from behind and gives me a big hug from behind, I will be startled by that. I didn't necessarily feel that way in the past, but now I will be. And so I appreciate someone approaching me from the front and asking me first before a hug, if not in words, at least by gesture, if it's okay to be hugged. I now have, of course, more arthritis and those kind of issues. Sometimes some people's handshakes can actually hurt, right? and they need to.
Yeah.
And many of us, as we get older, or if we've ever had an injury, in our hands, that is hard. I love many kinds of massage and the touching of fingers and the holding of my face. I love the sense of, one of the newer senses of touch that I've experienced is walking on moss, on green moss out in the, I'll actually take off these big hiking boots that I usually wear and just walk on the moss on a, in a wild area. And I think the feel of wildflowers and getting down underneath native plants. Of course, working in the soil, that's another feeling of touch. These are positive things. Kneading bread, maybe most of us aren't doing that, but working with clay can give a lot of that same feeling. But more of a challenge in the touch area is that I bruise more easily than I ever did because of some of my medications. I actually encourage people to write down how best to approach me, because for each of us it's a little different. For me, the startling thing is bigger than I would have expected. And it affects all the senses, or pretty much most of the senses. I like to be hugged, but I like that open arms coming slowly towards me, and so I can reciprocate that I'm wanting this hug, rather than someone taking over on how I'm going to be touched. Again, this is pretty much how everybody, or most people would say the same thing. But until I wrote down some of these things, a very good friend of mine said her husband was constantly approaching one of their relatives from behind and giving her a big hug from behind. And she was trying to tell him that she could see that startled the relative. But until I had it down in writing on my little ABCs of friending, she couldn't really communicate that clearly to him. And now her husband has stopped doing that and has is approaching that relative in a way that the relative can receive it and reciprocate. It's so many of us act out of habits from a long time ago, and we just need to be more conscious of what people want in the moment.
Yep, very, very true. And when processing things slows down, so if somebody comes up and hugs you, if you don't have dementia, you kind of click, and you can figure out who it is, do you want the hug, and what's going on. But that 7 seconds, like we talked, in terms of letting someone respond, that's huge. I mean, if we sit and we click off 7 seconds, we hate silence, but that's a long time to not know what's going on, and that's really what you're asking for is let me know, let me get comfortable with what's going on so that I can decide, do I want to be part of this or not. And
exactly. Yeah, it reminds me of high school dances. You didn't. I'm sure there was teasing, but you didn't force someone to dance with you. It was an invitation to, and it could be just by gesture. There doesn't have to be real words involved, but yes, we are inviting each other to engage with us, not springing it on people. And I think the seven. I've not heard of the 7-second rule in relation to this, but that's a good one. It's a very good way to monitor oneself.
Yep. It's very, very important. What about, do you get any type of fee at all for balance? Has that been an issue? I know you had mentioned falling.
Because my first symptoms were falling, in hindsight, we realized it was part of the same thing. It was probably part of the spatial intelligence issue and the fact that of the glasses that were inappropriate for me to be using outdoors, the eyeglasses. But I've had physical therapy for balance several times in my life, and I try to, and I think it's very helpful. Still at that, I have been advised that should I ever be stopped by an officer who wants to do a sobriety test by the walking with your hands, hands out, foot on top of foot, I'll probably never pass that. And I hardly, if I have one drink of alcohol a month, that's about it. I'm not, my balance will not be perfect, but physical therapy for that is very important, and having and all the safeguards that they do with the physical therapy, being typically being near a wall or a chair as you do that physical therapy. We got to remember that dementias typically, or cognitive changes, do not just affect what we think of as intellectual things. They affect our whole body functioning and our emotions a great deal also. And we, so therefore, I'm much more likely to drop things than I used to, clumsiness kinds of issues. And along with the falling, it happens that the antidepressant that is so ideal for me in a patch form was found as, because it was originally a drug for Parkinson's disease, and they just found that it also helps with the dopamine generally for at least people like me who have some Parkinsonianism atypical symptoms. Anyway, a bit of tremor, some things like that. I find that it's the more every step I can take, that old rule or mantra that each step you take, it helps your brain. It helps my whole body, and therefore doing whatever I can to be as a stable a walker as I can be is important. I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't often talk about that, and yet it is for me personally a critical part. And as I meet more people, it's surprising how many have overlaps with other issues that like the world the world of MS and ALS and other movement conditions, Parkinson's disease or just symptoms of Parkinsonianism. A lot of these things are interrelated, or that scientists should be talking to each other. Practitioners should be, who are in one specialty, should be aware of the others and the latest research on the others in order that we find ways to live, to integrate all our symptoms, or to so my hammer tools, which is pretty typical in a lot of people with actual Parkinson's disease, and while I don't have that disease, it's important that I see a podiatrist to keep as healthy a feet as possible, because that is my exercise of choice anyway. And we are. I like that mantra. Where I am not my disease. I would go on to say I'm not. I'm not just the cognitive change person. I am also have changes in many aspects of my whole body and of my whole person, including my emotions, and I am part of a whole family. I'm part of a whole community, and I'm affected by, and I need to contribute to the well-being of the whole earth. All these things are very interrelated, and seldom do we talk about that. So that's
okay. What about like handshakes and stuff? I mean, there's so many different types of handshakes out there now. Have you noticed any differences with that?
Yeah. I'm somebody that always gave kind of a good firm handshake, not tight, but I think I had a prejudice against people who gave a very weak handshake, and not realizing that perhaps if there were physical issues for that, and now just the touch of the fingers is a positive thing. The tap on the shoulder as when they're in front of me is a positive thing. I've learned not to judge by how firmly someone can handshake, and I might gently hold a hand for a bit longer than to just do this firm businessman-like squeeze of the hand, which can be overbearing. I guess that would summarize how I'd feel about that.
Okay, well, sounds good. Let's talk about taste. Have your taste buds changed at all?
We keep hearing about people with more advanced issues and elders generally as not having a strong a sense of taste, and therefore adding more seasoning than they used to, or for me, that's not the case. In fact, I think I taste. Maybe it's because I'm using more organic and locally grown foods, tasting them at their best times, and I do feel the need to avoid MSG at all costs, and many preservatives, because the aftertaste is besides which I know they're not good for me, but the aftertaste is overwhelming. when I'm under too much stress, I eat more, kind of as a comfort kind of thing, and and it's interesting when I have lots of physical activity and I'm enjoying the walking in the woods and so forth. I don't feel the cravings for food, except to it's very important for me to eat several small amounts of food through the day. Especially if I'm doing heavy walking and physical activity, pulling lots of garlic mustard or something, I'm going to make sure I have food close to me and drink. I will, under too much stress, get diarrhea, and I am much more aware of that than as a young person. Stress didn't affect me in those ways. So again, I think I sometimes taste good things even. My taste buds are very, very sensitive to both good taste and to the toxins that I might come across.
Okay, and I think it is interesting. I mean, I think my body is reacting more to some of the chemicals and different things, or maybe I'm just getting older and recognizing, slowing down, what's affecting.
And they do say that some allergies come on upon us, or sensitivities come upon us later in life, and but I think the accumulation of these things, and in what do they say, in the average building, even a church, the average church building, or pretty much any building, you're going to encounter many, many more chemicals than our grandparents did, or our great-grandparents did before them. And the soil that our conventional foods are grown in aren't nearly as healthy, generally, as they were for our great-grandparents. So, that's bound to have some effect on how foods taste, too.
Yep. Yeah, that's for sure. Another thing that, and I noticed this a lot with my mom, and I noticed when she was in the nursing home, a lot with other people, and I've heard this from so many people that I've talked to that are diagnosed with dementia, is body temperature issues. And
yes. I need socks on my feet, even though I don't really have, because of my walking and my physical activity, I don't really have a lot of problem with circulation, but my will get chilled, and so often I'm wearing socks at night in bed, and at the same time I need a cool pillow, and I'm turning my pillow over, or using switching to a different pillow when the pillow I've been leaning against has gotten warmed by my body temperature, my face, so it's very interesting that different parts of me need different things, and to sleep soundly, and sleep is so important to us. So, and some of us have a much narrower set of degrees at that where we are most comfortable when we're sleeping, and since sleep is so important to us, I just I have several pillows. I have I do what I need to do to really feel comfortable. I know others during the daytime are more affected by. If it's hot weather, they're more affected by the hot weather than I am. But I know that can change. For now, most of this is what I need for good sleep.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's important. Again, sleep is such a critical piece, and I mean, it causes us stress. It can cause us memory issues. It can cause us, cognitive problems, even if it's not dementia. It's critical for all of us, and we really have to pay attention to that. I know for my mom, her sleeping patterns definitely changed, and so that was important. But she also, would be cold. I mean, my mom used to. I mean, this is one of my funnest memories of my mom was. And it wasn't a fun time for her, but it's kind of hilarious when I picture it. But it could be literally 40 below zero, and my mom would be having a hot flash, and she would be sitting outside in the winter with it snowing in a blizzard in shorts, beet red, and for this woman who had severe hot flashes to be cold was just a huge, huge change. And something that we didn't recognize at first because I mean that thought never even came to us really because she was always really warm. And or a time we were at the nursing home at a picnic, and there was a woman who was nonverbal, and she was in a wheelchair, and she had a tray across her wheelchair, and she was banging on it, and the staff was getting really upset with her. And I said, I noticed that she had socks on, but she didn't have shoes on, and that her pants, when she sat, raised, and so her legs were exposed. So I asked if they would just get a blanket. And they got a blanket, and she immediately got this big smile on her face, and she calmed right down. And they said, oh, we had no idea. We had no idea. And she was she was one of those women that, couldn't communicate, through speech.
Right.
Had these eyes. In fact, someone asked me if there was one person in the world that you would want to talk to, it was that woman. Because she had the most interesting sparkle of an eye, yet she couldn't communicate so much of the time the way that I'm sure that she wanted to, and people didn't know how to communicate with her. And I thought if there was one person I wanted to talk to, it wasn't the president, it wasn't wasn't the Nobel Prize winner, it was this woman in this shell of a body people would refer to her as, who was just brilliant. And I would have loved to have known who she was and how we could have cared for her better. And just amazing how and it can change just kaboom for people.
Right.
I hear people with Lewy body a lot of times struggle with their temperature. Their body temperature just fluctuates constantly, and it's very difficult for them to stay comfortable. And again, something that can be dealt with by layering or unlayering of clothes. If we're just conscious, it can be getting somebody out of a breeze, noticing that, just even noticing, okay, it's breezy out now. Is this affecting somebody? Just ask. Just ask. Just consciously care. Why don't we talk about, we've been talking almost 2 hours, I can't believe it, but this is just so fascinating, and I think it's just critical information that people need. Can you give us some examples of speaking differently? And I know you mentioned today where, you stopped and said, I'm going to take ownership. I'm kind of rambling right now. And, to me, it wasn't overly evident at all. And so just to let you know that.
Right.
But what are some differences?
But you're a patient person, and you you're used to being around persons with some cognitive changes, and others, especially those in denial on their own and so forth, will take that as my taking up too much space, especially in a meeting, and wanting to control the conversation or what we're talking about. I tend to talk chronologically instead of getting to the point, which might be the end of the story, or I go back and this person called me, and then she was coming over, and I have to work very hard to brush aside all those unnecessary steps or I try to do that. And some of this, you should know, is not probably directly resulting from the Alzheimer's type or vascular dementia type of mild cognitive impairment, but actually I have an underlying health issue that my mother and others who in my family who are affected by cognitive changes, many of us have a tendency towards seizures or some develop actual epilepsy, where my mother, for instance, would have grand mal seizures. And if you have left temporal lobe epilepsy, you tend towards wordiness and having a hard time getting to your point, but finally getting to it. We are some of the best writers of writing lots of books and so forth in history, but those of us with left temporal lobe, but it can be irritating to people. And when I'm fatigued, it's even my tendency is to do that even more so, because I've that combined with having difficulty finding my words, pulling the word I really want out of the shelf to, in my brain to say it, or in my mind, and having to so often find another way to express it. And with my vocabulary, I usually can, and I can smoothly do that. It doesn't feel smooth from the inside at all, and it is very exhausting. So what might be like, I used to be able to do several press conferences and a speaking engagement in one day, no problem. Especially when I was running for office years ago. But now, like what we're doing today on the radio, I would never schedule another talk or sort of an on-demand speaking thing anytime. In fact, after this radio show, I will go outside and into the woods and refresh myself. I used to take naps, but now I find out that that's what I need to do. So speaking is, first of all, the little tiny lesions in my brain that show some that would be associated with cognition are very close to my language lobe, and that is what is most affected for me. And other people have different things, but for many people with cognitive changes, finding our words is difficult. Mm-hmm. And the more relaxed setting, and you help me relax a great deal, the better. Because then I don't pretend as much, which is, of course, an added level of tension. I can just be myself as much as possible. And that's why memory cafes are wonderful, because everybody else, or just about everybody else in the room, is knows well what it is to struggle to find a word. And it's great that when we can just communicate. So, and each of us is probably different as to what we'd like when we are speaking. I am happy to receive a signal that would help me, like a little note turned over by a good friend to remind me that they're looking forward to the point of my what I'm trying to get to, I often invite people to when I'm trying to find the right word, I'll gesture to the people I'm talking to. Because I think I've described it enough, and I can't think of another way to say it, and they'll just, together we'll come up with the word, or we won't, but we'll acknowledge we know what we're talking about, and we'll go on. And and that's true with it. With it doesn't have to be somebody with cognitive changes who will be able to do that with me. It's and I think it's a gift that when we can be that at ease with the people that we're talking with, that we can say, yeah, well, neither of us can think of the name of that restaurant, but we know which one we're talking about because we've just described where it is and what kind it is, and then we don't have to have that word. We can just decide if that is the place we want to go to or not.
Yeah.
So that's a lot about how the speaking thing. There is more and much more exhaustion. I tend not to talk on the telephone after 9 o'clock unless it's in the evening, unless it's a very good friend where I just can be totally at ease with not finding my words easily. But generally, I much prefer emailing. Anything that's sensitive or where I need to be precise and concise, it's best that I email it because I can go back and put in that word that I couldn't think of a paragraph before, and I've learned that I better proofread everything because so that my communication is my biggest challenge, and that's just the way it is with me, and yet it's I feel that people should have patience with that, and it is a form of disability, but it's one of my many difficulties. I'm still when I'll often come up with a wonderful turn of words, but I can't count on that. I can't count on like when I was running for mayor in Madison, I would be able to just in a debate be able to just turn a word and or remind another definition of the word or something that the person my debate partner had just used, and just really talk in short quotables, and now I do not attempt to challenge myself in that way. I'm becoming comfortable with how I speak, and my biggest adaptation now that I've learned is to ask for a little time before I respond.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, this has been so enlightening. I think you have just given such great information to so many people. There's just so many nuggets of how to interact better and easier. And one of the things that I love that you said was, when I'm speaking, I don't, if I'm comfortable, I don't have to fake it. I don't have to pretend. And if we all think of how exhausting that is to be something we're not, or to try to be accepted, always on the edge, feeling like you're being judged, that's a horrible place to be.
Oh, it is.
And to allow somebody that freedom to be who they are is a gift. And, I think if we can put it back on ourselves to how uncomfortable that is and how much work that is and how much we hate that when we're in it, maybe, just maybe it'll be easier for us to be more conscious and more giving and more accepting of others, knowing when we always say do unto others as you'd like done unto you, start walking the talk, start living that line, because people with dementia deserve it too.
Yes. Yes, and we are easily discriminated against, not only for what our losses in abilities are, but for the perception that we're going to become hostile, or we're going to, become not able to engage in good decision making, or any number of things that people, maybe they observed in somebody at a few people at very advanced stages, and which isn't even universal for everybody at advanced stages, say, of Alzheimer's, but expecting that in anyone who has been public and has shared their story of how they are with their current level of cognitive changes. I have to say that there are people who make judgments about me and discriminate against me based on what they think they've decided I'm going to become, and assuming that's going to happen tomorrow, and or later today. I mean, it's like it's unfortunate. And that kind of that tends towards isolating a person, and that kind of thing is the worst thing for that person, for me, but also for society, because for our communities and for society, because it's going to push people feeling judged and feeling the impatience of others or the fear from others is going to push us, or it will accelerate our cognitive decline, as it would for anybody. And on the other hand, to leave it more positively, the true friends that I have experienced are people who remind me of what I can do and how I am helping to change our culture to a more accepting and more and healthier community, rather than emphasizing what I can't do quite as perfectly as I used to do. And part of this is my true friends laugh with me and enjoy the moment with me as we each are right now. And that is a gift. And that is a gift we owe to each other.
Definitely. Well, again, Mary Kay, I cannot thank you enough for your chat today. It's absolutely been wonderful. Do you want to give out your website again one more time for people to be able to?
And I'm also happy if people do Facebook. My Facebook name is my name, Mary Kay Baum, and I'm happy to, especially people who appreciate nature or discussions about cognitive changes. The website that For Memory uses is www.formemory.org. In other words, For Memory. We realize that it's not just, and in fact, I have very, very few memory changes. That is not my issue. But to preserve my memory, to enhance it, we need to change our culture and change our environments to healthier ones. So that's why we use the term For Memory. And
wonderful.
I thank you for having us on, and I hope that people will especially pay attention to the youth camp, because it is important that our youth have understanding, and they will be the leaders of the future to make our culture what it should be. and accepting.
I agree. Thank you so much for being with us. Our time is up. We'll see you all next week. Thanks again, Mary Kay. You are absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Hey everybody, Jared Sebestier, host of Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. Few people can just flip the switch from working a career 30 or 40 plus years, retiring on Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.